Hi, everyone. Brad Porter here with my weekly Sunday update. There's a lot going on in the world. I want to talk about leadership. I have a few thoughts. I had a great visit with Mike McCue this week. We also lost Fred Smith, the founder of FedEx. And then obviously, geopolitically, there's a lot going on. And so I'm gonna touch on, things I've been thinking about on all three of those. First, it was just incredibly great to have Mike McCue, the founder and CEO of Flipboard, come and visit Cobot this week. I met Mike first in Woodstock, New York, as he was packing up paper software because he had sold the company to Netscape, and I had accepted an internship working in his team. And so a couple weeks later, I flew out to Mountain View, California, and joined Netscape. Um, the and then, I joined Mike on the Tell Me journey as employee number 5, as the first engineer, and helped build that platform. Stayed with the company for 8 years until we sold to Microsoft in 2007. And then instead of joining Microsoft, I joined Amazon. And that story is well known, but for the first 11 years of my life, Mike was the biggest, most dynamic leader, and I learned a ton, right? And so to see Mike again, it'd been frankly way too long, was amazing. Mike has always had this like really infectious energy. He's kind of known for just everything's awesome, but to like have that boost of Mike coming in, and it hasn't changed. Like the energy was infectious. It really influenced the whole team, and I think Mike's just a gifted storyteller and an experienced Silicon Valley veteran, and so I expect to catch up with Mike a lot more in the next couple of years, and so that's amazing. We lost a tremendous leader this week with the loss of Fred Smith. I had not worked with Fred directly, but the story of FedEx is incredible. I mean, one of the fastest growing companies ever, 100 million in revenue in 6 years, which now it's like, wait, why did it take 6 years, right? So it's funny how the scale of things has changed, but FedEx is a great example of like just continuously compounding, building a great fundamental business, and then growing it. I didn't work with Fred, but I worked at Netscape under Jim Barksdale. Jim Barksdale was a long time kind of lieutenant and COO of Fred Smith's at FedEx. And I think that the thing that, Barksdale had a number of things, but Barksdale was an incredible leader at growing organizations and scaling very, very fast. I think Netscape hit 100 million in revenue in maybe 3 years, 3.5. But Jim's famous phrase was the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And so Jim was relentless about focusing on what's going to compound and keep growing that. And then obviously in the world right now, what I've been thinking about is boundaries, right? I think there are 3 things that are hard when it comes to setting boundaries. One, the hardest thing maybe is to figure out where your boundaries are, right? And whether this is in company accountability, whether it's in personal relationships, whether it's in geopolitical, boundaries are important, and figuring out where your boundaries are is challenging, right? The second hard thing is enforcing boundaries when you need to. I think the hope is that the awareness of the boundary and maybe the threat of the consequences of tripping that boundary do all the work, right? That sometimes I think we think this in parenting and others, it's like the threat will do all the work, right? And that tends to work with kids until they're about 7. And then the threat doesn't work. They want the reason, right? And sometimes sometimes the consequence is necessary too. And I think, that's the unfortunate reality, is that when you set boundaries, you sometimes have to be willing to enforce those boundaries. And then the third hardest thing about boundaries is if you do enforce a boundary and there are consequences, then there's a fallout. There's almost always a fallout. And so sometimes that fallout, everything heals better, right? And sometimes that fallout is not pleasant. And so I don't think we know where we are in this Middle Eastern um, situation, and we're kind of, the president, the administration made a decision to enforce a boundary, and now I think we're waiting to understand whether maybe the world heals toward more peace, or maybe there are consequences, because there are always boundaries on both sides. So, not necessarily ending on the most hopeful note, but on a more positive side, we just hit summer solstice. It's beautiful. I hope you're out enjoying the amazing weekend. Those in the heat dome, hope you stay cool, and we'll update you again next week. Please give a like, give a comment. Would love to hear from you.